Hi there. Hi, I'm Chris Schindler. I'm the author of a new book called Unfinished. And thinking about the best advice I've received is not that long ago, actually. And it's from who I call my spiritual leaders, Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra. And it is to approach things with a no resistance and no anticipation sort of lens. So that's what I remind myself of every day. I show up with no resistance and no anticipation, or at least I try to. I'm not always successful around that.
Chris, so what does that mean? What does that mean?
That means, to me, it might mean different things for different people, but for me, it's, just receive the day as it comes to you and don't resist, because when we resist things, it causes stress for us, right? So something goes wrong and we resist it and we want to get upset about it. If something goes wrong, I'm like, oh, well, okay, how do I shift? How do I shift? Because I can't do anything about that, right? And then the no anticipation part is about not anticipating. So I'm in this meeting with you today, right? And I have no expectations about, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible, or this is going to be the best thing ever. I'm just going to be present and not, try to anticipate anything before it happens and just enjoy the moments. So that's what it means to me.
Wow. Okay, so that's interesting, right? Because for folks who are watching instead of listening, I misspelled Chris's last name on the graphic, but we had time to fix it. But Chris let me know, and she said to me before we even started, 20 years ago, I might not have said that. So what shifted for you to give you, I guess, permission? Maybe that's too strong of a word, but
Yeah.
the opportunity to correct that.
That's a really good question, Phil, because I think it's just knowing that it's okay. Like your intention was not to spell my name wrong, right? And so it's nothing to like be upset about. So it's just what happened. I noticed it. And I also know that you're okay to receive that feedback in the moment. So it's a shift in how I show up, I think, in my life, with just knowing more about myself and what's okay about me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, 20 years ago is when we first connected,
We
which
did.
is interesting, right? We're
Yeah.
sitting, I remember your extension 1962. You're
Oh my
upstairs
God.
from me, the 27th floor,
Yeah.
long ago at the US Bank building there in the middle office on there. And
Yeah.
I remember, right, we had lots of chats both in your office as well as by my desk there.
Yep.
And so you were our leadership development manager, and that's what you were doing, right? You were talking about that. So tell me about the shift from that Chris to Chris today. How did that take place?
I love the question. You're making me think deeply. And I was thinking about this the other day as I'm preparing for my virtual launch celebration tomorrow for my book being published. I was thinking about, why am I doing what I'm doing today? Right. And so in the past, I did a lot and this isn't a bad thing, right? Like I showed up at work and it was a lot about doing for others at work. And it was about improving myself, say, for the betterment, like my credentials and my whatever. So I could do my job the best. Right. And then I made the shift at some point in time, not very long ago, around how do I be the best me for me, not for others. And so I had that shift. And now I have this shift, and I was like, well, why did I write this book? I'm going to have to explain that. I've had this shift around how can being the best me help others. So I think I've had this like evolution in my life around how I've spent time on myself and who I've done that for. And so I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but it kind of explains my shift and why I might be more comfortable today saying, hey, you spelled my name wrong there. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of
Yeah,
what I've been thinking about lately. Like, why am I doing all this? And what kind of evolution have I gone through? Yeah.
That's cool. So was there an event that caused you to want to change? Was there something that said, you know what, this me is no longer serving me, serving the greater good. I need to become or embrace somebody else?
There's been lots of events in my life that have sort of shifted in the way I think about things. And that I could talk about, and I talk about some of that in my book, but that would be a lot of conversation. But in particular, over the last handful of years, I have been in corporate America I've been in corporate America forever. And so in the handful of the last several years, I have found that I just feel more and more depleted in those environments. Feel like, I don't fit into, I never really felt like I fit into these environments, to be completely honest with you. But I've adapted because of whatever, stability and wanting to, do the right things for your family and wanting to grow and develop in my career and things like that. But I've really noticed that I've not been happy going to work every day. And I was like, and one day my husband's like, you should find something that makes you happy, where you feel like you can be yourself and where you feel like you can add the value, that aligns with what's important to you. So I think that working in corporate and I'm sure there's a lot of corporations that do well, that have good environments, best places to work. But overall, corporations aren't really good yet at helping people be who they are authentically. And that's why you have all of this, diversity, equity, and inclusion sort of work going on. So I decided that I needed something different where I could show up every day and really enjoy going to work. So I did make a shift, but there was just a noticeable kind of, maybe 5 or 6 years ago where I was like, I really got to do something different. And so, but I didn't actually do something really different until maybe a year ago or so, where now I'm working for this consulting organization, really enjoying myself. And that's kind of where the book came in too, because as I was going through that self-realization, I was like, other people have got to be experiencing this stuff. And so maybe I can be helpful in that arena.
Awesome.
Again, maybe that's too much, didn't quite answer the question, but that's kind of what's rolling in my mind.
That's great. Yeah. That's awesome. So that's cool. So let's talk about the book. It's called Unfinished, right? Mm-hmm. So what does unfinished mean, Chris?
Yeah, that's interesting. There was just a book. Someone wrote a review, I'm so grateful for that. And they were talking about how they thought they were in their life. It never occurred to them that they weren't done in their life. So, and this person's about where I am, my age. And I thought, that's what I want people to know, right? Like, you've achieved all these things, maybe or maybe not, but it doesn't matter, because it does matter, right? Like we base our accomplishments on what we achieve a lot of times, but there's more to do. So for example, I'm not that far away from retiring, maybe 10 years at max, right? And what does that mean? Like, that doesn't mean I'm like done. I still have more to do, right? So we don't have to define ourselves by a job or a title or the house we have or the car we drive or we got that lake home or, whatever that is, like, because there's more possibilities that you haven't even imagined, because you have sort of boxed yourself in these expectations that you're supposed to achieve in life. And then because of that, you're not, there's more, you know what I mean? Like, there's just more. You're kind of narrowing what your expectations are of what's possible. So to me, that's kind of a long explanation of the concept of unfinished, and just helping people recognize that, man, Phil, you're not done. You're not done, I think. But, you're not done. There's more. You're not done till, you're not on this earth anymore. So what are you going to do about that?
That's a good thing to remind ourselves of, though. And you talk about embracing unfinished. You've got 4 parts in your book. The first part is all that embracing that. So
Yeah.
how do we embrace it when it's so uncertain, though? I mean, one of the sections you talk about is achieving clarity during times of uncertainty. So
Mhm.
how do we embrace that when it is so uncertain?
I mean, again, I love your questions. But you know what? I always think in organizations that I've worked for, there's a lot of change. It doesn't, and in personal lives, people have changed too. But most of my experience is around working in organizations and having change, and change freaks people out. And so, when I think about clarity within ambiguity, when we are in the change process, we feel like things are not clear. We don't always know where we're going. We don't always know, is my job going to still fit in this change? Do I have a job? So we think about all of these things. And the clarity piece is really kind of taking a look at the present and what you have control over and honing in on that. Phil, can you see me still? Oh.
Your screen is froze.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened. It went black.
It's okay. Keep going. You're good. We're back.
Okay, you can see me still. Well, that's what matters. Okay, good. So, the clarity piece is really honing in on what we know, what we can control, and then we just feel better instead of thinking about all of the things that are going to happen that we have no control over. So, to me, that's what clarity in ambiguity means. When things don't seem clear, we have to really focus on what is clear to us and operate with that in mind every day.
Yeah.
Does that make
Very,
sense?
sure does. Yeah, focusing on what we can control and what is clear is a great way forward. Because
Yep.
not at your point, not everything is clear. Not every there is a lot of murkiness. So if we can anchor onto something, we can stand strong in that.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes it's just the small things in our days. We focus a lot on big stuff, but let's just focus on the minutes and know what is real right now and what we can clear. Like, you're going through big change, you're part of this big project, but I know what I'm doing today, and I'm very clear about what I'm doing today. And let's just embrace knowing that and feeling good about that. And then tomorrow is another day. We'll worry about tomorrow. Let's keep it a little bit smaller, keep ourselves in check that way.
Yeah. And to your point about earlier, right? Being present and being right here, wherever we are, right here and right now, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, okay, I said earlier, my spiritual leaders are, Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle. Love those guys. And they talk about, like, I never really got meditation until I started reading up on them a little bit, and how we spend a lot of time worrying about what's next. And we spend time and energy thinking about what happened in the past. And so think about that. That just like creates stress and chaos and unclarity and all that kind of stuff for us. And so meditation is about being in the present, even if only for 5 minutes, and just not thinking about the past or the future. Like, if you can think about meditation about just being present, it alleviates a ton of stress for people. Probably take down a lot of blood pressure levels.
Yeah, that would be a very, very good thing for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So I'm guessing your screen went black, so wiggle your mouse a little bit and you'll come back.
Let's see.
Um,
You can hear me though still?
I hear you
Okay.
just fine. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I'll see if I can get out of something else and maybe that will help.
Yeah, I think maybe your screensaver came on or something. So no
Okay.
big deal. So let's talk about the second part of unfinished, which I think is probably the part that resonates the most with me, and that is getting out of our own way, which is super easy to talk about and often
Mhm.
super hard to do. So you talk about three parts: moments that matter the most, orange barrels and single lanes, and bigger than you think. Let's talk about those orange barrels and single lanes. I guess coming from Wisconsin, I would say that feels like home to me, Chris.
That's funny. And I feel bad that my face is stuck. I hope everybody's not seeing my face stuck the way it looks right now, but I don't know how to get this going. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Orange barrels and single lanes. So I was just like, that came to me as kind of a metaphor, because we are on this life journey, and just like we're in a car driving from point A to point B. So as we go through our lives, and we're driving from point A to B, we have orange barrels and construction, like you said, very in the Midwest, lots of that happening all the time. But they get in our way, they slow us down. Sometimes they cause us to come to a halt. It gets very frustrating, and we get stressed out, and we didn't have a plan B to kind of work around that construction. So when I think about that in our own lives, this happens all the time to us. We have things that pop up, they get in our way. The name is spelled wrong. My screen freezes. It might get in the way of doing a perfect job on what we're trying to accomplish today. But there's things you have control over and there's things you don't. So how do you deal with those things that kind of pop up, those orange barrels and those single lanes? And how do you sort of minimize them one at a time? So it doesn't mean that you can fix everything in your life. You can't stop things from happening. But to me, the orange barrels are a lot about how we show up in our lives, or when things do come up. So how do we react to those things that we can't control, and how do we hone in on what we can control? So if it doesn't mean we can avoid them, but we can minimize them by just not making our life about those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Accepting what is and accepting what is not, and just minimizing the obstacles and understanding that the journey is what's the important piece, right?
Yes, and it goes back to those small things, and appreciating those little things every day, or sometimes things come up and it just makes you grow a little bit more. You learn something from it. It helps you make better decisions in the future, or whatever the case is. But if we become very dramatic about those things as they come up all the time, it doesn't help us move forward. We get stuck.
Yeah, and stuck is no place to be. That's for sure. We need motion to not decay and not get mossy and not get not stay where we are, because we're not meant to stay where we are. We're, to steal your book title, right? We're all unfinished. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. You got it. Yeah.
Beautiful. So 2 more parts to just dive a little bit into here.
Yep.
As we get closer here to unearthing all the goodness in the book, and that is part 3, being unearthing your superpowers. So what is the superpower principle, Chris, and how can we embrace that to embrace our unfinishedness?
Yeah. So I know we kind of use that term, whoa, okay. I love Marvel, and, there's a lot of superpowers that happen in Marvel. You too? Are you a Marvel fan too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love Marvel. So as I was writing the book, I was like, I'm going to do a little research on what super and what power means. And so I looked up those words, and the bottom line is your superpowers are like a magnification of your natural self. So whoever you are naturally and authentically, when you're allowed to be that person, or you allow yourself to be that person, you shine. You're supercharged, because you have that authenticity behind you. And when you can be yourself and shine as your authentic self with a capital S, more opportunities will come your way. You will be happier. You won't feel like you're trying to fit in everywhere. Things just kind of come together, and then that also has a ripple effect on those around you. So I think individuals being able to shine as their authentic selves unleashes their natural superpowers and can really position them and others for fulfillment. Success is kind of a word, like everybody defines that individually, but I think feeling fulfilled in life is really important. And like you have a purpose, and knowing who you are and living with who you are is very related to what your purpose is in life.
So how do we find that though, Chris? How do we find that? I mean, authenticity is a word that
Mm.
many bandy about, but few actually can define it. So how do you define authentic, and how do we get there?
I think you have to build your awareness muscle. I think going inside, and there are some activities in the book where I help people sort of do that. Like there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. First of all, is just having some exercise, doing some exercise around, what are my values? What is important to me? We don't take a lot of time always to sit down and think about that stuff. And then once we figure those things out, we say, okay, so what are the decisions that I need to make that will help me um, align with what's important to me and what my values are. So I'll give you an example of that. And this is something my husband and I did when we decided. My daughter's 20, almost 23. She'll be 23 next month. But when we decided to have a child, and we just have one, we sat down together and we thought, well, what kind of parents do we want to be? And we thought, we were both working retail at the time. Well, he was really working retail. I think I had been into the corporate world at that time. But we decided we wanted to be parents at the same time at home with our kids. So that was important to us. So that was a value of ours. That was something that was important for us. And then he actually changed jobs so that we could both be daytime working people and be at home evenings with our child. So that's just an example of that. So what's important to you, and then what decisions do you make that allow you to show up in a way that's important to you? So that's kind of what I think about, being your authentic self. The other thing is sometimes we don't even know what our strengths are. We don't know our strengths. We don't know our talents. And I've talked to people like that, and being in the corporate world and the training environments, if you ask people to talk about their strengths versus talking about their weaknesses, what do you think people hone in on more?
Definitely they're negative, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah, definitely they're negative. So people don't naturally um, think about what their talents and strengths are. So one of the things I talk about in the book is, think about the people around you every day and listen to the words they say to you. Like somebody might say, "Oh my gosh, you're so good at that thing," whatever it might be. And you didn't even think about that, right? Like you're like, I am. So one tactic I say is listen to what people tell you and believe them. When I was young in my 20s, I think I had a bachelor's and master's in fine arts, and drawing was my major, which you don't see anymore. And I was like, I've just had a bunch of part-time jobs, and I've done artwork. Like, who's going to hire me? And my sister at the time said, well, why wouldn't they hire you? You've done so many things. You're versatile, and that's really important to companies. And I chose to believe her. And I was like, I am versatile. That's really great. That helped me believe something about myself, my authentic self, that I did not know before. So there's a lot of try this sort of activities in the book just to help people think through how they can get in touch with who they are and what their talents are.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love most about the book, Chris, is that it's not just stories, though your stories are wonderful, but
Mm.
also it has activities so we can actually do some of the work for ourselves. It makes it super powerful. So good work on that.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the last part of the book is the one probably that, I thought when I thought about it, right, the getting out of my own way, that was important. But really the being messy, being you, and giving up on perfect really resonated with me because I like to think I'm a almost recovered perfectionist. So, I'm an
Almost recovered.
imperfect.
I love it.
That's right. Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. Almost recovered perfectionist. So with that, let's talk a little bit about that, right? So, what does it mean to be messy and be you and to be unfinished?
Oh my gosh. I think messy, I think means, I mean, I'll just tell you what it means to me. You can tell me what it means to you if this resonates with you, but I feel like I'm also probably a never completely recovering perfectionist. So this is a work in progress, but that's kind of an example of messy, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna get away from being a perfectionist. Well, you probably won't fully get away from that, right? Like, and that's okay. I'm going to start exercising and, and then you do it for a month and then you stop, right? Like, that's okay. Maybe it wasn't the right exercising program for you. Maybe you didn't have the right motivation. Like, that's kind of what I mean about the messiness, right? Like, there's not a one size fits all for anybody or anything. And something that I love, and I share this in the book too, is I'm a strength certified coach for Gallup Strengths, and I love strengths. And if you take the assessment, you have your top 5 report or top 10 or top, all of them, whatever you want, whatever version you want of it. But I like the top 5 because it tells you, your top 5 talents, which are the things that you do and how you show up naturally every single day. But it's 29 million people have taken that assessment, and only 1 in 34 million have the same combination of those top 5 strengths. So I think about that, Phil, like that's very messy. It's no wonder people don't feel like they fit in. We are very unique from each other. And so being messy is sort of embracing that there isn't one way to do things, and maybe this isn't the right time, or maybe you have to find your motivation, and don't get discouraged, because this is sort of life and our journey. Nothing is gonna be perfect, which goes back to the no resistance and no anticipation, right? Because there's nothing that's set in stone about life. But the best we can do all the time is to know who we are, what's important to us, and align our decisions kind of around that so that we feel fulfilled in life. So sometimes that means making big, decisions, or making little decisions that help us do something different that's going to be more fulfilling. Or sometimes that means shifting who our friends might be, because the people we hang out with don't really receive us for who we are, whatever the case is. But that's the messiness of life.
Yeah, that is the messiness in that life, but that's also the meat in the sandwich, if you will, right in the middle. That's the
Yeah.
good stuff. That's the stuff that we get to
Yes.
enjoy the most. And I love getting to enjoy that. And I loved chatting about this, Chris. There's so much more that we could talk about in the book. Folks, if you're loving this conversation, I encourage you to go to ChristineSchindlerAuthor.com. I'll place that on the screen on the bottom there, so you can spell that. Schindler is Schindler. Christine with a C, ChristineSchindlerAuthor.com. Get a copy of Unfinished. But before we wrap up, Chris, give us one more tip. How do we get started on the path to being unfinished and embracing who we truly are?
That's a good question. I think my advice here is small but mighty. Doesn't have to be big things that you do. It doesn't have to be huge goals. It's any small action you take to get to know yourself, to do things that make you happy. Any small but mighty. I call them small but mighty because I think it's the small things that are most important. And then celebrate that, right? So if you take a small step to realize something that was important to you that you didn't realize before, or a small step to receive a compliment instead of saying, oh no, that's no, I don't know how, not receiving that compliment. I think it's the small things every day that make us feel like we're on our path to doing the things that are right for us in our unfinished lives.
Small but mighty, and then take the time to celebrate.
Yep.
Well, Chris, I hope you're taking time to celebrate. Congratulations on your first book on Unfinished. It is wonderful. Friends, if you're listening, if you're watching, we hope you've enjoyed this. My quote from Chris's book that I gave her as a blurb was, I said, it's packed with relatable stories and helpful exercises. Unfinished encourages and guides us to understand and accept who we really are. If you want to be your best, most authentic self, this book is for you. So go, friends, go get a copy of Unfinished. Get to know my friend Chris Schindler at ChristineSchindlerAuthor.com and embrace your messy, wonderful, beautiful you. Thank you, Chris. This was fun.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed. Thanks, everyone.